Melody is arguably the most important part of music. It doesn't matter what genre either. Melody is most often the memorable idea, the thing that keeps you coming back for more, and it's the thing that gives you the fuzzy feelings inside. In this video, we're going to go through 5 levels of melody writing, but more specifically, this video is focused on how to find the best notes. Level 1 is pentatonic randomness. The pentatonic scale should have been the first scale you ever learnt. If you haven't learnt it, here it is in A minor. And this is pretty much all you need to know to get started. With this backing track, where there's a free download below, we can play any note from the pentatonic scale anywhere without much thought and it will sound acceptable. Just so you know, I've recorded all these examples on different instruments so that you can get a sense of how it applies to music in general rather than just to one instrument with little context. So let's hear it in practice. Level 2 is the minor scale with some intention. The difference between the pentatonic and the minor scale is that we add in these 2 notes. We can treat this scale in the same way as the pentatonic and just play random notes to create a melody, but you will find that sometimes some of the notes don't sound good. For example, if we take the first chord from our progression, A minor, we can easily find notes that sound horrible even though they're within the scale. This is because the note in the melody is grinding against the notes in the chord. This can be easily fixed by simply playing different notes. And that's the lesson in this section. We don't want to be totally random. We can come up with ideas randomly, but if we don't like a note, we change it. So with that in mind, here is some random notes from a scale, but I've sang it a couple of times and avoided the notes that clash. Level 3 is chord tones. This one is a little more complicated than the previous levels because instead of just doing random notes and then fixing errors, we're actually going to follow the notes we find in the chords. The backing track we've been using is a simple 4-chord loop. Each of these chords has 3 notes within it. For this exercise, the notes we're allowed to use follow these 4 chords. So when we play the first chord, A minor, the notes within the chord are the only notes we're allowed to use. When we play C major, we're only allowed to use the notes in C major, and so on. Here's what it sounds like. So far, we've gone from totally random to slightly intentional to extremely limited. And now we're going to move to level 4, voice leading. Voice leading can be thought of as an extension of the chord tones from level 3. The biggest difference is that we want to connect our melodic notes from one chord to the next. And that means that instead of being restricted to some specific notes, we're now able to use any note en route to the chord tones. It's that simple. The reason why this is important is in level 3, when we went from the A minor chord to the C major chord, there is only one difference between these 2 chords. It's hard to make a compelling melody when you're only allowed to use 4 notes over the space of 2 chords. So now we're free to do whatever we want, so long as we land on a chord tone when the chord changes. And here it is in practice. You can also incorporate non-scale tones into this idea as well. For example, the note A flat does not belong in the A minor scale. When we use this note over the A minor or the C major chord, it sounds terrible. But this A flat note can be used to connect the A in A to the G in C, and that instantly makes the notes sound nice. You can use any note that doesn't belong in the scale in a similar way. I like to think of it as if things feel a bit lifeless, use some non-scale tones, and if things get a bit too weird and experimental, revisit the chord tones. So voice leading gave us loads of freedom and removes some of the randomness and restrictions from the first 3 levels. Let's bring this all together with level 5, steps, leaps, and rhythmic variation. Now that we're at level 5, we need to take everything we've learnt and turn it from musical exercises into music. But I need to explain a couple of things first. A step is when a note moves from one note to the next available note in the scale. A leap is when the melody skips one or many notes. It doesn't matter if you're going up or down. Melodies can be built from steps, leaps, or a combination of the two. Melodies built from steps tend to be better for lower energy states like verses, while leaps are better for higher energy states like choruses. This is not a hard and fast rule, just a general trend. Next time you're listening to any music, just pay attention to the perceived energies in the melodies and notice if they're using steps or leaps. It'll help you understand this idea in a real-world environment. But real talk here, most melodies are a combination of both steps and leaps. It's important to practice these ideas in isolation so that you can understand them better, but there's no need to restrict yourself to one or the other when you're writing a song, unless it's something that you want to do. And this bleeds into rhythmic variation. Most of the examples we've heard so far have been written with a really straight and unexciting rhythmic pattern to demonstrate the concepts. By displacing some of these rhythms, we can breathe life into our melody. Some ideas are starting a melody before or after the first beat, holding on to notes for longer than what feels comfortable, running through a bunch of notes quickly, or any other rhythmic variation you can think of. Any of these ideas will help make a boring melody exciting. So let's bring it all together and show you the final example. I hope that was inspiring. I have another video like this coming up soon that will explore melody writing through a different lens. It's complementary to what we looked at today, so subscribe for that. But in the meantime, if you want to learn about some of the biggest misconceptions in music theory, check this video here. If you want to write your first song, check this video here.